We're doing our life change series, and we're going to start a new part of that, and it's called The Touch That Changes Everything. In Mark chapter 5, we come to a passage of scripture where there's a man that comes to Jesus named Jairus. Jairus' daughter is at home dying, and Jairus comes to Jesus and asks Jesus to come to his home. Now, this is important because Jairus was an official person that was part of the temple and worship, and so he's a religious man, but he knows that Jesus is the only one that can change something that's going on in his life. So he comes to Jesus and tells him that his daughter is dying, and Jesus is rushing through the city with him to get to Jairus' house. However, along the way, there's an interruption. There's a lady who has been touched with an issue of blood for many, many years who touches him in the middle of a crowd, and it stops Jesus in his tracks. I can remember we used to have a professor at school that used to say, there's no such thing as interruptions, just divine appointments. So when they're walking through this crowd and Jairus' daughter's in desperate need of Jesus, it almost seems like, well, why would he stop? Why would he not continue going? Because God had a divine appointment. This lady was desperate for change, and there was nothing that was going to stop her from reaching Jesus. She was seeking a touch that would change everything, and Jairus needed to see this touch as well. The first thing we see is we see this lady's condition, and that's what we're going to look at today. In Mark chapter 5, 25 through 26, and it says, and there was a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing better, but rather grew worse. We see that this lady had an extended suffering. This woman realized that she had a problem. And because of her condition, she was much like the leper that we looked at last time. She was an outcast. In Leviticus chapter 17, it gave the law for people with an issue of blood. She was not allowed to enter the temple or the synagogue. She was to have no physical contact with her husband or her children. She was in all respects an outcast of her society. And so for 12 years, she had been living in isolation. No family, no friends, no corporate worship, no hope for change. She had gone to great expenses for her suffering. It said that she had been sick for 12 years, and the lady had not only suffered this sickness, but she spent all that she had trying to find relief from her suffering. In Luke chapter 8, verse 43, it actually adds a little bit to the story, and it said she spent all of her living upon expenses, and neither could be healed of any. When reading Luke's description, you get the sense that just how expensive this was. She not only had spent all of her money that she possessed, but she had also spent all of herself emotionally trying to find out that none of the doctors could bring healing to her. Have you ever felt that way? Have you sought the answers for what's troubled your life? You have perhaps spent great amounts of money or time trying to relieve yourself from those heartaches and pains, only to find yourself, in the end, both physically and emotionally spent. This is where this woman was. And we'll look at tomorrow how her life was changed.